Today, stocks bag another monster session, even though the election isn't over yet. Hundreds of thousands of votes have yet to be counted in some critical swing states. In fact, Trump's camp has already filed a lawsuit in at least one critical battleground. Plus, they've promised to request a recount in another must-win state. And finally, we take an early look at how closely the election returns matched what the polls predicted. I'm MacKenzie Sigalos, and this is CNBC After Hours. More than 1,300 points added to the Dow in just the past 3 days, as stocks soar for a third consecutive trading session. No official new president, no problem for Wall Street. As we explained in our deep dive yesterday, markets tend to perform best under a divided government. Look at the top performing S&P sector today. Healthcare, up more than 4%. Why? Well, it's clear there will be no blue wave, aka democratic control of every branch of government, meaning something like single-payer healthcare getting passed on Capitol Hill and upending the current system is now much less likely. So if the blue wave didn't materialize in Congress and markets are betting on a divided government, then that accounts for potential President Biden. And as of right now, in this moment, with some states still too close to call, that looks to be the most likely possibility. But Donald Trump is not going down without a fight. His campaign says it is suing both Michigan and Pennsylvania to get them to stop counting mail-in ballots. Pennsylvania is currently too early to call, but NBC News has called Michigan for Biden and determined him to be the apparent winner in Wisconsin. Trump is taking issue with that state's results as well today. His campaign promised to ask Wisconsin for a recount once they're able to do so. CNBC's Lebeau is on the ground in Wisconsin, and he's got the details.
The Trump campaign believes there were serious irregularities in the counting of votes in several counties in Wisconsin, and as a result, it is requesting a recount. Remember that when that recount takes place, and that's likely over the next couple of weeks, they will have a chance to question the validity of these votes, specifically, I would imagine, in those counties, because the recount is done on a county basis, county by county, and so they'll look at those votes, and that, again, will play out over the next couple of weeks. But the Trump campaign believes, yes, there were irregularities in their opinion, and that's why they want the recount. The Wisconsin Elections Commission believes that almost all of the ballots that were cast in this election have been tabulated. There may be a few hundred provisional ballots that are outstanding in a couple of small municipalities accounting for a few hundred votes. They may not have reported their totals here. But as of today, Joe Biden's campaign and Joe Biden has racked up about 20,000 votes more than Donald Trump here in Wisconsin. And because that is a difference of less than 1%, it allows the Trump campaign to say, look, we think there should be a recount, and under Wisconsin law, they can have that recount. Now, whether or not that results in enough votes being either disqualified or changed so that Donald Trump is ultimately declared the winner in Wisconsin, that remains to be seen. Wisconsin is critical. Along with Michigan and Pennsylvania, this is part of that blue wall that the Biden campaign has been counting on to retake the White House. This is a battleground state because, while it's only 10 electoral votes, they are crucial. In order to win an election this year, both campaigns believe you need this state. Now, they need other states as well, but with 10 electoral votes, it's not something that either campaign can afford to say, well, okay, we didn't win it. When you're within 1%, as the Trump campaign is, they believe that a recount or legal challenges in court could result in ultimately a number of votes being thrown out, and that could be the difference between losing and winning this state.
Okay, let's get to our sound check. Here's a roundup of the day's biggest action and what the top newsmakers and business leaders had to say on CNBC's airwaves.
1, no expectations for a massive economic breakthrough. So forget about big fiscal package, etc. 2, the Fed will have to come in and do more. The Fed's insurance mindset is going to be in play, and they're going to look to insure against bad outcomes. And 3, we're not going to overcome COVID quickly, so the stay-at-home stocks are doing better.
look, there is a suspicion here of fraud. I'm not going to declare it. I'm just going to say we are taking the proper precautions, and I guarantee you the other camp is too, but the finest lawyers, just to make sure.
Republicans made a very active choice over the last few months not to acquiesce on their belief that stimulus should be not as large as Democrats' $3.5 trillion, but much closer to $500 billion. And so if Republicans have just pulled off this amazing feat, no one, including Republicans, was expecting it last night to go so well for Republicans in the Senate and in the House. And so they're now starting with this mandate that's, telling them the political decisions that they've made to date are the right ones. They're what people want.
I don't think it's going to have any effect on business. I think this election already has told us nothing new. Government's going to be divided.
Clear now that whoever becomes president will not have such a mandate to jam something through Congress over the objections of the other party. It's also clear that the Senate is not going to be as Democratic, if it's Democratic at all, as was projected.
Even though it's too soon to call every state as we wait for all the mail-in ballots to be counted, it's not too soon to start evaluating how well the polls predicted voting patterns. CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Liesman sorted through the results and identified some surprises.
It's still too early to say whether or not the polls got it wrong in picking a Biden victory. At this moment, it looks like it's not a bad call. It could be wrong, but it looks like it's not a bad call at this moment. I think it's pretty incontrovertible at this moment that they got the magnitude of any Biden victory wrong and/or underestimated Donald Trump's strength. Any time that there's change, it's difficult for the polls to catch up. By that I mean a lot of time and money was spent trying to fix the problems of 2016. And perhaps they did some of that and maybe did a better job overall on that stuff, but then 2020 presented itself with its own problems. I think we also have trouble with certain ethnic groups, Latino voters. I think that's a big issue that needs to be discussed and figured out. Certainly, President Trump outperformed with Latinos relative to how he did in 2016 in Florida and across the nation as well. Nationally, according to the exit polls, President Trump did 4 points better with Latinos than he did in 2016, and Vice President Biden didn't change his share at all relative to Hillary Clinton. So that's a pretty big pickup nationally for Hispanics. I think the issue that pollsters deal with is the idea of treating Latinos or thinking about Latinos and Hispanics as a single demographic group. In fact, they're very, very different groups, and they respond to very, very different issues and do not behave monolithically in any respect at all. I think it's a big thing that pollsters are going to have to rethink how they think about the Latino vote and start to think of it as a bunch of separate votes where different ethnic groups in different states have different voting patterns. I did talk to a Republican pollster this morning about these numbers, and he sees it as a very big deal for realignment for the Republican Party in favor of the Republican Party that may have echoes for years to come. The economy was the #1 issue in the exit polls, not the coronavirus. Now, there's a lot of different contradictory stuff in the exit polls. For example, when we asked people, is it more important to rebuild the economy relative to fighting the coronavirus or fighting the coronavirus relative to rebuilding the economy, they think the coronavirus is more important in that context. But ask them what the #1 issue is, it's the economy. And one thing you found is that in a lot of the swing states, the states that ended up being very close and that we're still counting at this moment, the economy was seen as better in those swing states than in the rest of the country. And one thing that I learned as an economics reporter from this, for what it's worth, is that I think the momentum of the economy matters more than the absolute level of it. And what it shows is that the momentum of the economy right now is towards putting people back to work, is towards recovering from the pandemic, even though we remain, in some respects, well below the levels of February before the pandemic. I think it mattered a lot to the electorate that the economy was moving in the right direction.
Okay, time for today's numbers round. First up is 22. Proposition 22 passed in California yesterday, delivering massive wins to gig economy giants Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash. The ballot measure allows drivers and delivery people to continue to be classified as independent contractors, meaning that they're not eligible for certain employee benefits. Prop 22 exempts these companies from a new California labor law that aimed to force them to make drivers full-fledged employees. Shares of Uber and Lyft rose higher today on this news. Next is 15. Voters in Florida approved a hike of the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour. The current minimum of $8.05 will jump to $10 next year. Every year after that, it will rise $1 until it's hit $15 in 2026. Florida is just the latest addition to a growing list of states and cities raising their pay floors to the $15 level. And finally, 100 million. Face masks are once again in short supply as COVID-19 cases rise in the U.S. Even though 3M, the nation's largest manufacturer of N95 masks, is on track to produce 100 million masks a month this year, not to mention the 20 million N95s that Honeywell is producing every month. But demand is still running ahead of production, and the supply in some states is dwindling. According to Reuters, 2/3 of health systems in Michigan say they only have enough masks to last about 3 weeks, while the state health department recommends keeping a 90-day supply on hand. That's it for After Hours, but this thing isn't over yet. Make sure to check out CNBC.com and download the CNBC app as our newsroom reports out each new update as counted votes keep rolling in. And we'll be back here in our home office tomorrow and Friday with new editions of After Hours, so be sure to catch us then.